Hello, I'm Justine. Today I'm going to talk about my childhood. I grew up in a province called Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan is in central Canada. It's in the middle of Canada. Saskatchewan is a province with lots of farming, and I grew up on a farm. I grew up on a farm that grew grain. My parents grew different types of grain on their farm in Saskatchewan. And starting at a young age, I helped with all of the jobs that needed to be done on the farm. My dad also owned a business with his brother. My dad and my uncle owned a business together. Their business was about farming. They owned a business that sold chemicals and fertilizers for farmers. They also had a business where they bought seed from farmers and sold it across the world. So my dad and my uncle sold chemicals and fertilizers and bought or purchased lentils and beans and sold them all across the world. On the farm, we grew lentils and beans, but also wheat and canola. My dad also liked to experiment. So sometimes he would grow a big field of sunflowers or a big field of corn. But in our area where we lived in Saskatchewan, the land was well suited to grow lentils, beans, wheat, and canola. When I was young, I helped with things like making lunch and bringing food out to the workers in the field. Or I would cut the grass in the yard or clean out the big grain bins. This is a grain bin. That's where farmers store their grain before it's sold. And if there's a grain bin full of wheat and then you sell it all, and then we need to fill it up with canola, we need to make sure that there's no grains of wheat left in the bin. And that's a good job for kids. So I would have a broom and a shovel and clean out all of the edges of the grain bins. It was very dusty, so I wore a mask over my nose and mouth. It was very dusty. It's not a very fun job. Once I got older, I learned to drive all sorts of different tractors and equipment. My dad would teach me how to drive every piece of equipment on the farm so that I could help him during seeding. Seeding is in the spring when you plant the seeds that are going to grow all year. And I would help during harvest. Harvest is in the fall, in August and September, where you collect all of the grain that you grew and put it into grain bins. So I helped on the farm all year round, helping to grow the different crops. We lived about 20 minutes away from town, and the little town where we lived close to is where I went to school. I would take the school bus to go to school, and it would take about 1 hour to collect all the different children from all the different farms and bring them to the school in town. I had one friend who lived close to me, and she was my cousin. So my cousin and I lived about 2 kilometers away from each other, and we would ride our bikes over to each other's house, or we would meet in the middle and have a picnic. We would sometimes pack popcorn in our backpacks and some juice, and then we'd sit on the side of the road and eat popcorn and drink juice, and then we would ride our bikes back home again. In many ways, growing up on a farm is a very relaxed way to grow up, but it can also be stressful during the busy time of harvest and the busy time of seeding. There's a lot of stress about the weather. Farmers are always worried about rain, sun, wind, and it's never what we want. Sometimes it's too dry and we wish for more rain. And sometimes it rains at the wrong time and we wish it didn't rain. And sometimes it's too windy and we can't do the work that we need. And sometimes it's too hot and sunny and we can't do the work that we need to do. And so we have to be very good troubleshooters and problem solvers. It can be very difficult to make a decision. Should I do this today or should I wait until tomorrow? But tomorrow the weather could be even worse. So then you wish that you would have done it yesterday. So it can be quite stressful on a farm. There was lots of fun times too. My sister and I would ride our horses and jump on the trampoline, and sometimes we would get to go to town and visit our friends. If our mom was going to town, she would often take us and we would go to the park and she would go grocery shopping or go to the bank. When we got older, we were allowed to drive ourselves to town if we needed to, and we could visit our friends. Where we lived, we also had a really nice neighbor community. Even if you lived 15 or 20 kilometers away, we were still neighbors. And we would get together with our neighbors and their families and have barbecues or campfires. And sometimes we would go to the lake together. There was a lake about 30 minutes away from where we lived. And if it wasn't a busy farming day and it was really hot and usually very windy, we would go to the lake, and some of the neighbors had a boat. So we would go ride on the boat or learn how to water ski and spend some time together relaxing at the lake. There was also lots of fun in the winter time. Lots of the families nearby had snowmobiles. We also had 2 snowmobiles, and my dad would drive and my sister would sit behind him, and then my mom would drive a different snowmobile and I would sit behind my mom. And we would go on tours out into the middle of nowhere and have a picnic with the snowmobiles. And there would be other families meeting us there with their snowmobiles, and people would bring hot chocolate and sausages and crackers, and we would have a little hot meal in the middle of the snow and then keep riding all day long. It was very cold, and I didn't always have a lot of fun, but it's still a nice memory. When my sister and I got older, we also helped at the business for my mom and dad and my uncle. We would work in the shop, sweeping the floor and cleaning, or in the bagging area. When my parents and my uncle bought the lentils and beans from the farmers, we would put them into big bags. They were 25 kilogram bags. And so we would hold the bag and the machine would dump all of the lentils into the bag. And then there was a special special sewing machine that sewed the bag shut. And then we would fill up a big truck with all of the bags of lentils, and then they would go across the ocean. So my sister and I helped in the bagging room and also cleaning up all around the yard. When I was 18, I also got my professional driver's license. That means that I can drive a big semi truck. So my dad had a truck that would go to the farmers' yards, and I would load up the lentils and the beans and bring them back to my parents' and my uncle's business. So I would drive the big truck to all different farms and then bring it back to the yard, and then go to a different farm for a different crop and then come back to the yard. And so that was my job for a couple of years when I was 18 to 20 years old. I also drove a big fertilizer truck, and so I would deliver fertilizer to different farms with the big semi. All of these jobs were hard sometimes, but they're good experience, and I'm glad that I grew up on a farm because it made me into a creative thinker, a good problem solver, and a determined person. I would love to hear some of the lessons that you learned from your childhood. Let us know in the comments, and I hope to see you next time on another video from English Sponge. Thank you for watching. Bye.
If you want more videos like this, go to EnglishSponge.com. On the website, you can find videos from many different teachers. You can choose which level you want. A1 beginner, A2 beginner, B1 intermediate, or B2 upper intermediate. You can choose which accent you want to listen to. American, British, Australian, and also other accents. You can choose which topic you want to listen to. And you can choose which grammar point you want to focus on. The website will track your time, so you can see how many minutes you have listened to comprehensible input today, yesterday, and for the whole month. So go to EnglishSponge.com. The link is in the description of the video.